Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. So we're having Bob record this. So in case we want to use it for future professional development opportunities, maybe it'll be useful for HR, maybe, people who are here today but not able to join us, can watch it later. So I think everybody knows me, but just in case you don't, Laura Gardner. I'm the English Language Learner, Family and Community Outreach Manager in the Office of School and Family Partnerships. And so we are just going to go ahead and dive in because everybody will kind of introduce themselves as they go along. I'm going to be the timekeeper and the question asker. And we have 12 questions overall. And for each question, I will choose 2 panelists to answer each of those. And I would ask that each participant please limit your answers to 2 minutes each. Every time you're answering a question, 2 minutes, okay? And if I need to rein you in, I will. All right, and then at the end, we'll open it up for any other questions that you all have. Okay? Yeah, maybe I do. Alba has the camel. Okay. No, I don't really want that. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So Alba, I think we'll have you answer the first question. Please tell us where you are from and why your family decided to come to the U.S.
I'm Alba Morales. I'm the bilingual facilitator. Closer. Again. Okay. Better?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Alba Morales, bilingual facilitator for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. This is my almost 9 year working with the Hispanic families. I'm from Colombia, South America, and my son and we moved to the United States because the political and social situation in Colombia 13 years ago, it was very bad. They were kidnapping people just because, basically, the drug dealers. So I was working in education. I was trainer of teachers. We suffer. 2 of our colleagues, they were kidnapped and killed in Colombian mountains. So I really, really was feared for my safety and my son's safety. And my mother was here. So we just decided to move to Maryland, to the United States.
Thank you, Alba. All right, so Carolina, where are you? There you are. We'll have you also ask or answer that question. So tell us a little bit about, where you're from and why you decided to come to the U.S.
Thank you for being here. My name is Carolina Jacobo, and I'm the bilingual facilitator for Glen Burnie High School. That's my home school. But I work also for Anne Arundel Public Schools. I have 16 schools. And also, this is my first year being as a bilingual facilitator. So the reason why I came to United States is totally different than Alba. My story is totally different. My dad is an engineer, and he used to work. I'm from Honduras. Honduras is located in Central America. It's a small country, and it's a beautiful country. But I have to tell you, the reason why I came to United States is because my dad was offered a job here in United States. He's an engineer, but he's an agronomist. He has a coffee plantation in Honduras. So he had a contract to work in California. So we came as a family with him. I was 15 when I came to United States, and my dad put me in, I joined. My dad is like, well, you need to be able to go to high school. You need to learn English. So I'm going to enroll you in high school. So I did the same thing. Like I see some of my students at Glen Burnie that they taking ESO classes. I took ESO classes too to be able to learn English. And then I fell in love with my high school sweetheart. I met my husband in high school. So I got married really young. And I was actually, after I graduated from high school, I decided to get married. And that's how I stay in United States. But my dad, he went back to Honduras, and he lives in Honduras. My sisters and we decided just to stay in United States. So it's a long process, to be able to be citizen and everything. But that's one of the reasons that I came. And I have my whole family is back in Honduras. My dad's side of the family, they're all in Honduras. It's really scary to go to Honduras because right now there's a lot of drugs. There's a lot of drugs coming from Mexico and El Salvador, and especially there's a lot of gangs. So my dad is afraid for us to go to Honduras because, he's afraid that somebody can kidnap us or they can harm us. So my dad he prefers just to come and visit us instead of going to Honduras. It's not safe to go to Honduras at this present moment.
Thank you, Carolina. All right, we're going to move on to our second question. And Marina, I think I'll have you go first. So tell us a little bit about what school was like for you in your native country, and what are some of the major differences between school in your case, El Salvador, and here? Yeah, you're good. Just speak closer. There you go.
Going to school in my country, it was fun. At the same time, it was intimidated because they expect us to know everything. Since we didn't have special interventions programs, we're supposed to know everything. And being as a fun girl, I like to participate in every activity that it was running through the school year. I was having that type of fun, but I have struggles in math, and I never had the opportunity to get better because we don't have special interventions. We didn't have IEP programs. And also, it was a little bit intimidating because the discipline is really hard. It's physical without permission from your parents. So you have to well behave, or otherwise they're going to use the paddle or the ruler. They use it on me so many times because I was very active. I like to play a little bit and talk. And sometimes they isolate me because that's another punishment. They had to put you away so you don't talk to anybody. So that's one of the things that I went through while I was over there. But I was able to accomplish so many subjects that I was very happy that I liked them. And those were mostly like social studies, and stuff that is related to law school. And when I was able to finish my high school, I chose to study political science because I always, like I said at the beginning, I was afraid with math. So I was trying to find something that it would still give me a professional education, but at the same time without math. And I'm still having struggles, but it's better.
All right, wonderful. Tony, we kind of skipped you earlier, so we'll go back to you. So would you take a stab at this question to talk a little bit about what school was like for you in your native country, also El Salvador, and if you want to comment on any of the major differences, as Marina was talking about, like between El Salvador and here.
Oh, no, there are huge differences from...
Press the button. There you go.
There are huge differences in our country as here, especially in the discipline area, because you're disciplined really hard. I remember when I was in 4th grade, the teacher asked 2 by 2, and you have to have your hand like this, and if you don't answer, you will be punished really hard, So you have to learn, but it wasn't in a good way. That was really bad when that happens. And like Marina said, there were no any kind of special education for students. So it was what the teacher tells you to be, and nothing else was different from whatever they said. So you even didn't have an opinion. You couldn't even complain. There were no assistant teachers in class ever. Matter of fact, several times one teacher has to cover 2 or 3 classes because there were no enough teachers to help them. And I remember that teacher leave a student handling another class, which is really hard. We went to school to party, not because we wanted to, but because there were not enough teachers to take care of that. When you were disciplined, they used a paddle, or it was really hard in those days. Also, another thing is there were no desks in school. So I remember that my father came to school and they gave him an old desk. He didn't have table or anything. He took it home, fixed it, and painted, and brought it back to school. I felt like the king because I had the best desk in school, But that was that is something really different. Also, the hours of a school. You go to school from 7 to 11:30 in the morning. Then you go home, and there is no more class for you during that day. So it was like half days. Also, there was no transportation to go to school. You have to walk to school and back. It doesn't matter if it was raining, if it was cold, whatever the weather was. I mean, it was just about walking. My father used to pick me up at school, but not in a car. I mean, we had to walk both home, so no transportation.
All right, thank you, Tony. All right, we're going to move on to the third question, and we'll start with Carolina. Carolina, in your home country, were your parents, quote unquote, involved in your schooling? In what ways? And, what did they do specifically to help you in school?
Well, for example, every day I remember to this day, my mom used to read every night to us in Spanish, of course, before we go to sleep. And my dad, because he's in engineering, his subject, he's really good. He's strong in math, for example. He's really good in math. And I remember I would struggle too in math. And but my dad, he would put a lot of time every day after school. I remember he would after school he would have dinner, and then he would check our homeworks every day, and he would study with us math, and also with my sisters. But also I remember just growing up, and my parents, they always were very involved in our education. They always wanted the best for us. I mean, I know it's not every parent is the same, and not every Latino parent is the same, because I see situations with parents, for example, at the current school that I'm working, they don't get involved, they don't check their homework. And I do this with my kids. I check their homeworks because I want them to be successful in this country. They have the opportunity to come to that they were born and raised here in the United States. So I want a better opportunity for them. So, I mean, I know everybody has not the same, but I believe my parents, they were very involved in my education.
Great.
When I was little.
Thank you, Carolina. And Alba, could you talk about, in your home country of Colombia, were your parents involved in your schooling, and kind of what did that look like?
I would like to clarify first, we don't have a volunteer culture in Colombia. That is very rare. It's very unique. And education, academic or formal education, is a teacher's job. It's not the parent's job. So making that
yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at.
Making that clarification. Also, in Colombia, you can see there is a huge difference between public school, public education, and private education. So most of the families, they make enormous efforts to try to put their kids in private schools, because unfortunately public schools, they don't receive enough budget from the government to have, a good education. So I was in a private school, Catholic schools, with nuns from Spain, and they didn't allow parents to participate in school activities or to be involved or visiting the school. But my parents, the way they participate or they were involved in our education, it was by paying every month, right? Making that effort, getting us the school supplies and the textbooks. We need to purchase textbooks. The school does not provide the textbooks, for instance, in high school. They provide us with the space to do homework, which was the dining table, but it was a time to do homework. So the dining table transformed in the homework or projects. Also, when we were in high school, we have certain projects, for instance, to do a small model of the city or something like that. My father, he's a topographist, I don't know how to say, topographist.
Topography.
Mm-hmm. So he was involved. He helped us just cutting papers or doing this kind of stuff. And as a very unique experience, my mother, she participated in something that is similar that the PTA it's not a PTA exactly, but it's something similar, a group of parents that they meet and they talk about school issues. She was part of the PTA there. And as a matter of fact, she had the opportunity to give a speech in my high school graduation, which is very unique. It's not like it doesn't happen every single day. So she truly, although she has only high school education, she truly strives to be involved in our lives, in our educational lives. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Alba. Alrighty. So moving on to the fourth question, I think we'll start with Jen Hernandez. So Jen, in your opinion, what are some of the strengths of the Hispanic community, or maybe the best part, quote unquote, of being Hispanic?
Okay, my story is a little bit different, so I'll kind of share that briefly before I get into this. So my dad's family is originally from Spain. And when my grandparents left Spain, they lived between Puerto Rico and New York for a while. And where they lived in New York, it was very much a Hispanic, Latino culture community, and very challenging for them as they were both English language learners. So one of the things that I love about the Hispanic community is just the closeness, the warmth. They're very tight-knit, very accepting. For me, growing up, and it's still to this day, I live 3 streets away from my parents. My kids see my parents every single day. I see my parents every single day. We eat a lot of meals together, and our family, a lot of people that meet my family say, oh, your family is so close. So a lot of times with the multi-generational and that closeness is a really big strength, I think, of the culture and certainly of my upbringing. And that's really served me well. The best part of being Hispanic, something that I'm very proud about, and I think which has really lent itself to my career and certainly some of the journeys in my life. I spent my junior year in college living abroad. I went back to Spain. And so I stayed there for an entire year and lived with a family. And of course, they were very accepting and wonderful and very much embraced me. So that was a wonderful experience. But then to live here, I've transferred that to my own children, and I'd say one of the best things about it is that with the language, it's opened so many doors for me, for my family, and certainly now I'm working with my own children to make sure that they really understand the history of our family and that they really embrace the opportunities that having the language and certainly the experiences and the really close-knit supportive family can offer them as they really journey through life. I've gotten to meet a lot of different people from a lot of different areas and certainly travel to a lot of Spanish-speaking countries, which has been just, for me, really a wonderful experience.
Wonderful. Thank you. Let's see. Marina, would you like to take a stab at this question? So in your opinion, what are some of the strengths of the Hispanic community?
Well, unity. It is one strength that we have as Spanish, because we like to keep our family together. We like to be involved in everything as they grow in children's and family. Like me, by instance, my parents divorced, and my mom came here when I was still a teenager, but she never was away from us. She was there twice a year. We have a phone calls every week, and she was involved in everything that it was happening to me and my family. And then, I came here, and I had to embrace this culture that I am so grateful, because everything it was open to me, ready for me to take it, and I did. I am able to establish myself in here without forgetting that I am Spanish. I am from El Salvador. I like to go and travel every year. If I can, I would love to be almost 2 or 3 times a year. But at the same time, I embrace in this culture, and I was able to open a future for me, for my children. And that is something that I really like, and it is because I'm able to speak 2 languages. I'm able to communicate in both ways. And so most important, I'm able to help others to immigrate here and able to provide my services and anything that they need, especially targeting to the school system, because they're new to this country, they're new to everything. And as we shared before, our countries don't have the same services in our school system. But thanks that we are able to speak 2 different languages that help us to help the others to understand this culture and embrace it and receive every bit of services, it is a privilege to me to be Spanish and be established in this country.
Wow, thank you, Marina. All right, let's go on to Monica. Monica, so on the flip side of that question, the earlier question, what are some of the barriers that Hispanic families face in interacting with the schools?
Sorry. My name is Monica Lopez. I am a little bit different. I am actually have two cultures. My father's Cuban and my mother's Colombian. And I was actually born in the United States. I was born in New Jersey. But the barriers that I see working as a bilingual facilitator that happens to have her office in the International Student Services office, I see a lot of families that come in that have no idea what they need to do. We'll receive a phone call and they'll tell us, my child just got here and I need to put them in school. What do I do? So we have to tell them from the basics that they need to go get shots, that we need their birth certificate, that we need proof of residency. But the biggest issue a lot of the times is that they don't know where to go because of the language barrier. We see a lot of barrier in them trying to, for instance, make an appointment because they don't know English. They don't know where to find a notary when they need to get a TRV notarized. They don't know even the basics, where our office is, and they live in Annapolis. So there's a lot of barriers for them to just get into the school system. And then once they're in our office, that we give them the information that they need and we enroll their student, it's the next barrier is, okay, now you have to go to the school. We're going to give you the information. If they're Spanish speaking, they get the bilingual facilitator that works in their school so that they can help them get to the next step. Because sometimes they actually go to the school that's in their community and they get there and they're like, I'm here. What do I do? And so it's very different when they come to our school system from whatever country they're coming from.
Great, thank you. And Tony, I know you probably have a lot to add as well. What are some of the barriers?
Well, I will say first the language, because when they come, they go to school and they don't know what to say, how to talk. They don't even word many times a word in English. I have, in the case of students that don't even know how to say good morning in English, and they smile, they laugh, and you might think that they're laughing at you. Not true. They're laughing because they feel intimidated or they're ashamed that they don't know a word in English. So that will be, to me, the number one barrier that they have. Second, they feel very intimidated. They're in a new country. And another thing is that in our countries, when you go to a government institution, many times you're not treated nicely. Like if I'm going to buy a house, I'm just giving an example. It takes 2 years to buy a house. And then you have to pay this guy to help you do this, and then you have to pay the government guy to put those papers through. So when they come here, their mind, many times it's the same. They think that they have to fight to obtain whatever they need. So they feel very intimidated. And when they go to a school and they find a secretary that put their glasses like me, like this, and say, what do you want? They just feel... That is, I feel intimidated sometimes when I'll go to some schools, and I have to show them my ID because I feel a little bit scared by their look, I don't know who I'm talking to. So, and imagine people who just came from our countries. Another thing is the economy. I'm a reverend at church too, so I can tell about this. Last night, one of my church members told me, Pastor, do you have a mattress that you can give me? He had 2 little children, maybe ages 1 year and 2 years. And I asked him, yeah, I'll provide you one, but what's going on? He says, well, we're sleeping on the floor because we don't have a mattress. So the economy is really bad. I have another family who's been working for a company. The guy who hires them told them that they will be paid after 2 weeks. It's been months and a half. They're still working. They haven't been paid. They don't know what to do. So the economy plays a big issue. How can you study if you don't have money to it? The social resources that other students have, they don't have it. Like they want to go to a dentist and they keep asking me, do you know anybody who can charge me $50 just to check my teeth and that? Because they don't have. anybody where to go. The lack of knowledge of the educational system. If or Sal, many times I had to ask Monica because she's the one who knows more than maybe most of us. But keep asking, Monica, what is this? Or what does this mean? Or what department do I go to? And I've been working for the system 7 years, and I still don't know everything. Now, imagine a parent who just came in, and also one more thing is many times teachers talk to them like HSA, Guaira testing, FYI, and parents are like, they're blank. What are you talking about? When I came, somebody told me, ASAP, I need this. And I'm like, what's ASAP? So those are barriers that they do encounter. The lack of relationship between teachers and parents too, because many teachers go to class, teach their class, and they don't have any relationship, not the student, not to mention the parents. So these are some of the situations that they have to go through when they come.
Great, very well put, Tony. We can all... So, Karen, we'll go to you next. With both the strengths and the challenges in mind there, what do you think we can do as a school system to best help our Hispanic students and families?
First, a little bit about myself. My name is Karen McDonough. I know the name doesn't necessarily give me away directly. My mother was Mexican. My father was American. I was born in Mexico City. I went there till the end of fifth grade. I began sixth grade in California when I was 11. I think knowing all the strengths that the families bring with them to our schools, balancing the difficulties, I think a welcoming attitude, even things, and I know we're working hard on this signage, if it says in English, press the button and stand here and tell the person what you want to say, if that's not communicated in Spanish, that can be a barrier. But even then, some of our families are illiterate. So we're working on getting visuals, a little finger that points to the button that says this is what you need to do, just to gain that first physical access into the building. Again, the personal contact, that's something that we try to really help with, being around at arrival and dismissal time so parents can see our faces and they we'll have somebody that, okay, I remember that lady said good morning to me in Spanish, maybe she can answer my question. So that personal contact, again, to build those relationships like Tony was saying, that they depend on, because otherwise it can be a very scary world. And then keeping in mind those stressors, and a lot of times we seem to think that if parents don't come to school, it's because they don't care. Many of our families, many days have to make the choice, do I make money and put food on the table, or do I go to a parent meeting, do I go to a conference? It's not because they don't want to, but they're literally living, what's the expression in English? Hand to mouth, yeah.
Or paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, paycheck to paycheck, yeah. And so a lot of times that choice is very, very difficult for them. So I think having that understanding and having that welcoming attitude and being aware, or helping our schools, whatever school you're at, of that wonderful resource that we have is Language Link. Even though your bilingual facilitator might not be there, or if the person in front of you speaks a dialect from a different country, or not a dialect, a language from an African country, or a language from China, Japan. I have in one of my schools a family coming from the Netherlands. The parents speak English, but the child does not. That's a wonderful resource that we have to use to have that welcoming voice on the other end of the phone.
Thanks for mentioning that. I put a stack of the flyers by the door for Language Link. I think we're doing a pretty good job of making sure that everyone in the schools has that, but now I really want to loop back and make sure everyone at the board has it, because I don't think everyone knows that we have this 1-800 number. You can access an interpreter in any language you need at any given time. It takes like 10 seconds. You just put in the code. It's all on the paper. If you want me to come by your cube and help you, I'd be happy to do that. All right, so Carolina, do you want to also touch on that? Any additional ideas for what we can best do to help Hispanic students and families as a school system?
Well, like Karen said, she pretty much covered everything. But, I just want to add, if it would be nice to have a welcoming attitude when especially if you have a new enrollment, like a new student like a newcomer, just coming from a different country and just starting high school or elementary or middle school for first time in United States, it would be nice to have a welcoming attitude, starting with the secretary too. It would be nice, just a smile, or being the bilingual facilitator, be available just to assist the family that is coming to United States. Coming just for first time and enroll in school. Because you have to think, most of these families, they're immigrants. The majority of the Hispanics that they come to United States, they probably immigrants, or they probably have also they're, they have fear of, probably the parents are not around. They're probably like unaccompanied minors, that they come by them, with a brother or a sister, or maybe a person that they don't even they never grew, they never spend a lot of time with them. So they have to feel welcome. It would be nice to have like a welcome package or something, like you said, also that everything in Spanish, and also the video, that would be nice to have, because I think that's something important to have in school. In being as a facilitator, we try to assist as much as we can, but it's hard to cover. Sometimes we have, like for example, have 16 schools, and I know most of us, we have a lot of schools, and sometimes it's really hard for us to cover all their needs, and I constantly, like for example, like this past week, I enrolled like 4 new students in Glen Burnie High School, and this is only one school, and today is only Monday, and I just have one today. So I feel like every week we have new students just coming, and this is only from one school. So I can imagine, my other co-workers, if they're experiencing the same issues that I'm experiencing.
Yes. Thank you for those ideas. Those are really great. So Alba, I'm going to have you go next. And if you could describe to us some of the differences between the various subcultures within the Hispanic community. Like, for example, obviously, Colombian culture is not the same as like Guatemalan culture and so on. So could you touch on that a bit?
Sure. I would like to clarify. Hispanic culture is one, because we all share the same language. But I won't call subcultures like a Mexican subculture or something like that, because being Mexican is a culture. Okay. Being from Puerto Rico is a culture. It's like to call United States a subculture from the English speaker country, something like that. Just clarification.
Thank you, Alba.
There are differences. There are great differences among the Central American countries, among the South American countries, and between all of them. As in the United States, it's not the same to talk with somebody from New York than from, I don't know, Oregon, because there are differences, and it's a cultural difference there. So the same happens with the different countries in Central America and South America and Spain and some other countries that speak Spanish. But I will say, basically, we all share the same language, but we use different words to point out the same object, for instance. So sometimes I'm speaking with a family from El Salvador, and it depends also of the educational level. So it is a family that they didn't have the opportunity to go to school, or they are coming from a very remote area in El Salvador. They will use certain slang that we don't know as a bilingual facilitator, so we need an interpreter for that. So they use words that we need to start, please clarify, what is that? What is el chucho? And it means dog. Also, the population. For instance, the Guatemala you were mentioning, majority of the people in Guatemala, they are coming from the Mayan culture, or the Aztec culture. So they have their roots there. Also, another difference, it makes the weather, the climate. So you are more outgoing and spontaneous if you are from the Caribbean and you talk faster and your color skin is different and you dance all the time. While I'm from Bogota, the capital of Colombia, is in top in the mountain from the Andes, so we are more quiet. The way we dress is a little bit more reserved. So there are those differences. And I will say also we have influence from other countries. So Mexican kitchen, it has such a rich influence from France, and you correct me, from Germany, even from some Asian cultures. Can you believe that spicy thing is coming from there? In our case, in the Colombian case, we have a great influence from Spain. So our dances and our food is, the roots are there, and we share that. So I can keep talking about differences.
No, I think that's great. I mean, I think it's just important for all of us within the school system to recognize that there are those differences and to not just make assumptions like, oh, they speak Spanish, so blah, 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 blah. And, you know, I mean, I know even from my own little experience, like when I was in Bolivia this summer, when I went from Sucre, where I was practicing Spanish, to the day before, like when I was going to fly out of Santa Cruz, I could not understand their Spanish, just like you're saying. It was more the coastal, like I couldn't understand any of it. So it was that different, just a short distance away. All right, Tony, do you want to touch on that question too, those differences?
Yes. First, I will say, and I want to apologize why I was late. There was a student at school who peed on the aisle, so they wanted me to call parents and deal with that situation before I leave the school.
What? This was elementary or middle or high?
Middle school. 13 years old, pee on the aisle with all the students over there. So he was showing all his parts. So.
Wow. Okay.
Can you
great.
imagine the principal? No, don't leave. You have to do this first.
All right, go ahead.
Okay,
Tony.
not a problem. And that's why I was late. And can call the school. Also, just to let you know, I've been living in this country 34 years already. My kids were born in California. My daughter is working for the Board of Education. She's a counselor.
Bilingual counselor at Mills Parole.
Yes, and my son is a teacher aide at another school, and I just have one more to get into the system. So, first of the things that I will say is the language, the sound of the way different places give the tone, the way they speak is different. It's like when we moved from California here, my kids come home and say, "Dad, they speak different here." You know, I mean, they don't speak as we do in California, because they could tell the difference in the accent how they were talking. Or maybe you can see that between people from Arizona, and here it's different. So in our countries happen the same. So Mexico speaks different. Ecuador, I will say, speak different. So sounds different. Also, the name of the food, they have different names, like straw. In English, in El Salvador it's pajilla, in Mexico it's popote, in Peru it's cañita. So all of them give a different name, and some of those, the meaning changes completely. Like the oven, if you talk to an oven to I believe it's a Puerto Rican person, I'm not sure which one, means something completely different. I went to Ecuador and I told them, ando arrecho, meaning by that I was a little bit upset. And everybody looked to me like, what are you talking about? Because being arrecho is when a person is in heat, when a woman wants to have sex with somebody else. So, and by the way, I was preaching in a church. So I'm like, they almost took me out of the church. Now, the music, it's different. Some countries is cumbia, some other is salsa. Mexico might be ranchera. Argentina might be tango. So all of them have a different kind of music. Also, the history of the politics it's different. Like, I'm not sure, but Colombia, you talk about Pablo Escobar, and many people might have that in their minds, and how many people got killed. El Salvador in the 80s, the civilian war that we have. So both of them are war situations where people die, but the history, it's different. It's not exactly the same. Also, the way religion is practiced, even though most of our countries are Catholic, we have Protestants too. But like in El Salvador, everybody's Catholic, but nobody goes to church. In Ecuador, they're Catholic, and you have to go to church. So it is huge difference in that area. Also, the way we were conquered influenced us. Like some were more influenced by Spain, others by Brazil, like by African people, like in Brazil. In Argentina, they were more influenced by German and Italians. So all those things make difference between one another. And as a Hispanic myself and a facilitator, I need to know those differences, even in Spanish when I'm talking to them, because it's not going to be the same. People get offended. By the way, if you call somebody, oh, how is Mexico? And I'm like, hey, I'm not from Mexico. Mm-hmm. I know nothing from Mexico. And they say, all the Mexicans. No, I am from El Salvador. So you have to make those differences. And one last thing that I would like to say is, when my kids came to Annapolis High, I'm not going to tell you the year because I don't want to insult anybody. One of the teachers put them with the ESOL students. My kids were born here. They speak a lot better English than I do. So they feel insulted when they did that. And my son went to hospital, and one of the doctors told him, do you speak English? And my soul told him, I think so. So because they stereotype, if they see the skin, they say, oh, this is a Latino. So which is not true, though. So you have to make sure of those things.
Thank you so much, Tony. You can see our meetings are probably quite entertaining because they usually all come with a lot of stories like this.
I can keep on if you want.
I know you could, but I'm going to be my time person. All right, we're going to speed things up a little so that they all have time for questions too. Number 8, Patty, let's have you go. So what was your experience like growing up as a child of immigrants? And did you ever feel torn between two worlds and that kind of thing?
Okay, I just wanted to share with everyone that my roots are similar to Jen's. I have a father who's from Mexico who came to the United States as an adult in his early 30s, and then he married my mother, who is of Swiss and Irish roots. And I learned the Swiss and Irish roots not too long ago. We always thought we were German, but we were from the German side of Switzerland. But this question has always been a struggle for my siblings and me, because having a mother who's American and we spoke, I can speak Spanish, not completely fluently, but my father spoke English in the household. And my cousins, I only have one set of cousins here in the United States. My father was really the first one that came to the States. And this has been a struggle my whole life. And it ties into when it came time, when I was old enough to fill out the Census Bureau, it was a struggle for me, because the Census Bureau recently, I think in the last 2 census surveys, they redefined that question as it relates to Hispanic. And they they define the Hispanic connection with origin. So when you get your Census Bureau survey, it will say, what origin are you of? Specifically, it says, is this person of Hispanic, Latin, or Spanish origin? And that feeds into everything regarding demographics here in the United States and what we measure. And then for race, this was a struggle for me too, because my mother being American, and I look just like her, my siblings look more like my father's side of the family, that was a hard thing for me too. But fortunately in the Census Bureau now, they do ask that question. So they have the one question regarding Hispanic origin, and then they have the other question regarding race. And for the question, the responses for race, you can answer white, black, or African American, American Indian, Alaska Native, Asian Native, Hawaiian, or other Pacific Islander, or some other race. So finally, after all these years, I've been able to say I'm of Hispanic origin, but I'm white. But my cousins are so funny because they call me gringa, because I am so much lighter skinned than them. But in my heart of hearts, I really feel a strong connection to my roots in Mexico and Spain, because my grandmother, my abuelita, came from Spain. So
Thank you, Patty. Thank you. We're going to speed up a little, but Monica, I'll still have you go. Would you like to talk about your experience growing up as a child of immigrants?
Well, in my case, my father was actually the first one to come from Cuba, and he helped bring the rest of his siblings. He's one of 10. I only have one uncle that's left in Cuba, and a few cousins, which I've never met. My mother's side, my mother was already coming, my grandmother was already here, and my uncles were already living here. So they actually met, as a typical movie, they actually met at the airport when my mother arrived. And they were married a year later. Even though my father would have married her 3 weeks after meeting her. She said no. But as I was growing up, being the oldest of three, many a times I would have to serve as an interpreter. Many a times I would have to make phone calls, and not so much for my mother. My mother is educated and spoke English. More for my father's siblings, for my aunts that didn't speak English because they didn't learn the language and they came much older. I had to make phone calls for credit cards for them. I had to make reservations in the airport. I had to help them if they got a letter. Can you read this for me and tell me what it is? And could you help me? So many a times I did. I was 10 years old and I was reading mail for them and telling them what it was. And a little bit for my father. My father went up to the 8th grade, but he learned English because he came when he was 21 years old. It wasn't great English, but it was enough to get him to work as a truck driver. But sometimes we had to help him. And to this day, I laugh because he tells me, I don't understand that. So we speak in English to avoid him understanding us, but yet he understands every word we've said. But even to this day, with my families, when I have family coming over from Colombia, I'll help them and serve as an interpreter for them. So am I torn? No, not really. I love being Hispanic, and I'm very proud of it. The fact that I can say my families are from two different places, I think gives me more joy in being more Hispanic. And I actually get on my middle brother's case because he didn't teach his children Spanish when they were little. And that was really disappointing because he took away part of that culture from them. Mm-hmm. And now, luckily, the girls have embraced it and they enjoy it. And my niece that's in 9th grade is actually, she tells me, Tia, I'm in Spanish 3 and I actually know more than the seniors that are in my class. So that's very, very, it makes me very happy that she feels so excited that she knows more than they do and that she can embrace that part of our culture also.
Great, thanks. So Patty, you kind of already touched on this in your previous answer. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to have Karen, if that's okay. Karen, sometimes there are misconceptions about what it means to look Hispanic, quote unquote, or be Hispanic, quote unquote. Could you please comment on that?
I think, part of tying into what Patty was saying is...
Wait, hit the button. Did you hit?
Sorry. Yes.
There you go.
I think, you heard a little bit from Patty and a little bit from Tony, like things his kids have experienced. A lot of us may not look Hispanic, but we certainly feel Hispanic. And I think a lot of, whether we still have family there or not, those ties that bind you to your, Hispanic culture, whether it's on just your mother or just your father's side, those ties are there. There is a little bit of angst sometimes, I think, touching on what some of my colleagues were saying, that I myself probably feel, on any given day, more afraid than I think I should to go visit my aunts and uncles and cousins in Mexico because of what we hear on the news. So there's those kinds of feelings. And, we will, do go back to that sense of origin, just as that maybe some of you identify yourselves as Southerners, or maybe you don't, or maybe you identify yourself as somebody from the West Coast. We have some of those feelings as well in terms of what it feels like to be it, even though we may not look it. Is that where you were going with that question?
Yeah,
okay.
And I mean, I think it's just important that we have to question. I mean, what does it mean to look Hispanic? I mean, you can you can be Hispanic or Latino and be white all the way to the darkest skin color, and I don't think a lot of people in our county kind of grasp that.
Right. Well, and I was going to say, it's happened to me where I'm at the grocery store and I'll hear, a mom and a dad talking about something that I'm sure if they knew I understood, they wouldn't want me to understand. But, even sometimes other
people, that are Hispanic or Latino may look at me and think that I don't understand what they're saying. So, it happens as well. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna skip down to, we're just gonna do 11 and 12, so we can open it up for questions. Jen, a certain story comes to mind with this question. I don't know if you're gonna go there, but are there any particular stereotypes about Latinos you'd like to comment on or dispel?
I am going to go there.
Okay, good.
So I talked a little bit earlier about my dad's family being from Spain, and Patty and I have this commonality. My mom's side of the family is Irish and English and Dutch. And so I definitely grew up with one foot in both worlds, which is great. I've passed that on to my children. I'm going to kind of mention that because we skipped
Sure, that's
10. But one of the things that has been a real eye-opener, and I'm glad that it came up on the panel here, is the appearance, or what somebody might look like. My children both speak Spanish. It was very important to me to keep a lot of the traditions and a lot of our family heritage alive, because I had grown up that way myself, kind of balancing between two worlds. But very interesting. My kids are very fair with blonde hair and blue eyes, but they both speak Spanish. And my son was at a baseball practice, and there was a coach from another team that walked up to him and said, "I saw your last name on the jersey. I'm so glad you showed up. I mean, Hernandez, well, you must be a great baseball player. And when did you get here from Mexico?" And my son's kind of looking at him. He said, "What? We're not from Mexico." And so we kind of had this conversation, and it was very interesting. We did play a team that did speak Spanish, so my son was translating. And so we knew what was going on the field, which was very interesting, about who was going to steal what base and that kind of thing. So it served us very well. It served him very well. But that was kind of a learning curve just for my kids to understand. People may not understand the whole background. And much like somebody just said about, I think it was you, Karen, about the grocery store, we are often places, and I've kind of taught my kids, if you see people struggling and they really don't know the language, feel free to throw them a lifeline and help them. So sometimes I think people are surprised when these kids with blonde hair and blue eyes kind of jump in and try to help out. But I think it's just that misconception that there's always an assumption you must be from somewhere, or certainly in my son's case, he's like, well, it was pretty cool. A lot of the good baseball players really, if you look at the stats, are of Hispanic or Latino origin. So that was kind of interesting. But for him, it just kind of caught him off guard that there was that real serious misconception.
Sure. Great. Patty, anything to comment on there?
I just wanted to say
Yeah.
one thing. One of the questions that I have heard my entire life, because my entire life has been so, oops, let's speak up. I just wanted to say one of the things that has come up my entire life, because I've always loved food and I've always loved to cook, is, oh, you're half Mexican, you must love spicy food. But that's not necessarily true. Not all Mexicans love spicy food. And just as in the United States, we have our own kind of different types of foods depending on the region that you're from. In California, you'll see a lot of fresh fruits and fresh, greens, and the North has squash and zucchini and more winter type of dishes that they're well known for. But in Mexico, I actually I had the opportunity to cook with some of my tias, and unfortunately they're not here in this world anymore, but they taught me a lot about my culture and my connections to my food and what I love. Like, there's a grouper that's you broil in the oven, and it's with lemon and capers and olives, and it's just amazing. And then my other tia taught me how to make the pollo con almendra. And when I looked at those foods and I really made the connection to my roots, especially in Mexico and many other countries in Latin America, go back to Spain. And we have Terry Poisson, the social studies coordinator. She can tell us, too, that our roots, and when you look at the foods, they go back to the Arab influences back in Spain. And I know from my roots, a lot of the foods that my tias cooked, they were from my father's side, they had a lot of Spanish influence. I still love chilies and I still love spicy food, but I will never, ever give my dad spicy foods because he just can't handle it. So
Great, thank you. Well, with that, let's open it up to you all. We still have a few minutes left, and I'm sure they'd be happy to, what kind of questions do you all have? Now's your chance. Ginny.
Well, I'm curious, what would you like to see from the school system for your families and community? What is it that is needed most?
Well, I think some of you touched on the welcoming, but feeling, and you talked about welcoming packets and things. What other ideas do you all have?
The awareness of the Hispanic culture. I mean, people like to be known and respected as they are, though. I mean, wherever I go, I mean, I'm a Latino and I'm proud of it. Not greedy, but proud. So anybody who goes to any place would like to be known as who they are. So the awareness, it's something really important. Also, the welcoming. You know, it's not just saying welcome and keep your face really serious. You know,
Welcome.
Welcome, hi. So that's.
But think a little bit systemically really quick here. Remember, the folks, everyone in front of us works at the Board of Education. Systemically, maybe, what kinds of specific things can we do as a system?
Okay.
Actually, Patty, I'm curious to hear what you say, and then maybe Carolina.
I just wanted to comment that I think one of the biggest things as a county is having more papers and documentation that are translated. And I don't just mean just in Spanish, but in many of the other languages. It's so important because if they're struggling and they can pick up a piece of paper and they're literate, they'll have something to go by. And I think that's really, really important. And I think that needs to be everything that we put out needs to be translated.
Well, Anne, would someone like to comment? We didn't really talk about the role of the bilingual facilitators, but hint, hint, I'm assuming someone's going to say we need more.
I was about to say that.
Alba? Okay. Alba, go ahead.
Language services, translations, documents translated into Spanish, but also let us be aware that there is a great number of Hispanic families that are illiterate. So even if we translate things, they need phone calls or a person to let them know what we need to communicate. So we need more bilingual facilitators. We need also, forgot the idea. No, bilingual facilitators. I forgot. I was about to say something. Yeah, I lost my train of thought.
Right,
the connected messages. They need to be bilingual. Also, all of them. And it will help us a lot to the bilingual facilitators because then we receive phone calls. They say, I got a phone call from a machine. And sometimes we are clueless. So all of the communication needs to be in Spanish. Signs in the school at the schools, bilingual signs in every single school because they don't even know where is the button to ring the bell. They don't know. Professional development. That was what I was about to say. I don't know if the word is too strong to say, like mandatory professional development, not only in cultural proficiency, but also to dip into the Hispanic culture and know that things that are so obvious for us is not obvious for the international immigrant families from the Hispanic countries. They don't know the yellow bus is the school bus. It's obvious, but they don't know. They don't know they need to show an ID when they need to go to the school to pick up their kids. They don't have IDs. We also need to be aware that there is a large group of immigrants from the Hispanic countries that they enter the country without documents, not even a document from their own country. They don't have ways to demonstrate that I am who I say I am. They don't have ways to demonstrate sometimes that they are living when they say they are living because they're sharing home with some other families. And they do verbal agreements to rent places. So we need to call our PPWs to say, hey, can you come with me and make sure this family is living in the place that they're living? So these type of things that we say, just bring us a proof of residence. It's obvious, of course, I will bring my BGE bill. Well, they don't have it. And they're afraid also because since we are public school, coming from the government, in their minds, they connect us with immigration. So sometimes they don't go to volunteer to school. They don't go to parent-teacher conference. They don't go to field trips because we have the background check. So they're thinking we are going to check with the criminal records, and it's a misconception about how being undocumented, I'm sorry, went over the time, how being undocumented is being a criminal, which is not. The proper word is being undocumented, not illegal. So.
All right, let's take a couple more, maybe two more. Yeah.
Next time I'll be on your panel. I'm a married person, but I adopted my children from Chile and Paraguay, and can tell you the reverse of your stories, because I experienced it as an American traveling to those countries and being a fish out of water. But now I'm working in HR, and I want to know, how do you think we could attract more Hispanic teachers to apply to our school system so that we could hire them? Do you have any suggestions, tips, something that I and Shanika can take back to our hiring?
Well, one dialogue that I briefly started with Flory last year was the idea of doing a bilingual job fair. And I don't know where that is at right now, but I'm sure you have a lot of, I mean, we could easily get some help to put something like that on, but I'll let the rest of them share their thoughts. Oh, yes, sorry, Patty. Patty needs to step out. Does anyone, Jen, you want to?
One thing, and just from the world language lens, and I used to also be the coordinator for ESOL for a while, so I had the two offices for a while. One of the challenges for us specifically, if we're getting teachers to, just from the perspective of teaching Spanish, we want to make sure that several things are in place, that not just that they know the language, but that they understand the pedagogy of teaching the language. So it's great to have native speakers and people who have lived, we do a lot with the culture. That's really important, but also that they have the pedagogy piece. We did have some conversation a while ago with the Embassy of Spain. So I think even if working with some of the embassies, they have visiting teachers, that would be wonderful, because a lot of them have received training in their home country and can bring those unique perspectives to us. I think we ran into difficulty at one point in time with getting them the proper documentation to be here over time. So I don't know where that is, but that would be great. I know one of the challenges we're having just to attract teachers of any world language is making sure, as I said, that they have certainly the capacity in that language and the pedagogy, but also that that we are able to make it a really smooth transition for them to come here, and that we're able to provide as an office and as a district a lot of the supports that they need once they come here. So I don't know where we are on that issue, but that would be wonderful if we could maybe talk about that.
Great. All right, let's take one more question. I know in respect to your time, any other? Anthony, anybody over here? Okay.
Instructionally, a lot of times the texts that we use, I think in schools sometimes highlight struggles of different groups, which is important. But I think to sort of change people's perceptions of what people are capable of, we need texts that aren't only about sort of struggles, but also about people from other cultures that are powerful and that are full humans. Do any of you have any suggestions of, I don't know, of any literature, any authors, or anything for sort of young adults, middle school, high school, even elementary, that you're familiar with? I know that's kind of confusing.
While you guys are thinking, can I say one thing? Have you ever been to the website Teaching for Change? Okay, I was just reading their newsletter the other day, and there's loads of ideas. I would say, I mean, the bookstore's right in DC. It's like 30 minutes from here, and they also have a lot of, curricula type things. But what else do you guys want to add?
Well, I was going to say, I don't know that textbook-wise, I have no clue, but I know that all of us certainly have successful professionals of Hispanic heritage that I think are eager to sort of give back and pay it forward and to motivate young people to say, like for instance, when we went to this Melfin conference that Laura and Monica work on, the guest speaker was somebody I had no clue he existed. He's this world-renowned neurosurgeon at Johns Hopkins who began his life in the U.S. as an illegal immigrant. And his story was not only was he a good speaker, but he has a powerful story, and he wrote a book. So I think the people are out there that, you know, if we could bring them to talk to different classrooms, I think would be
Well,
great.
and that's also one of the things that's a little different. I don't have a book title, but kind of piggybacking off what you said, is one of the things we're doing with a lot of our immigrant parent leaders this year is we're trying to incorporate them more into when we do some of our presentations, our kind of like working with International Families 101 roadshow that we have going on. We're trying to get more of our parents to come and also share their, you know, stories, their experiences and things. So, you know, as positive examples. And anything else on that one? I mean, we'll all be around for at least a few minutes to, you know, chat and answer any other questions. But thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate your time. And I'm going to get a copy of this. I think we'll probably put this on the intranet, so anyone can, you know, take a look at it if they'd like. So thanks again for coming. Thank you, guys. Yay.